All right. I would like to call this public hearing to order for the vacation of .14 acres of right-of-way on 100 North Street at approximately 650 East. All right, so we are going to first have a presentation by Lyle Gibson, and then everybody who has signed up, you have exactly 3 minutes. I am very strict about the 3 minutes. No clapping, no booing, and that's about it. All right, Lyle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just by way of brief introduction, the item before you this evening is for the vacation of a portion of the city's right-of-way along 100 North Street. It's approximately 650 East. I just have a brief map here showing the area that you can take a look at. Essentially what this is, the vacation of it is giving up of the right-of-way to adjacent property owners. And so the determination per statute under 109A6095, the council or the legislative body, after holding a public hearing, shall determine whether good cause exists for the vacation of the right-of-way, and the public interest or any person will not be materially harmed or injured by the proposed vacation. If that's the decision of the council, ultimately we adopt an ordinance, and the adjacent property owners then take their half of the road that's in front of it. In this case, you have two circumstances where there are owners that own both sides of the street, just next to each other. So the petitioner who's made the request, ultimately for the purposes of development on the property, has a sliver parcel on the north side of the street as well as property to the south. And then the adjacent property owner also owns the north and south side of the street for their property. This is something that the City Council did hear previously, and there had been some dispute and litigation on the process and the proposal. And so it's gone through a process with the courts where the city's been asked to renotice it, give opportunity for parties to be heard again, and again make a decision. So in accordance with that, the city has mailed out notices as requested to all owners within 300 feet of this proposed right-of-way area, as well as posted on the sign and done the proper notification in the clipper. So with that, I'll turn it back to the council unless there are additional questions prior to commencing the hearing.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to go. Would the applicant like to begin? We'll give you 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. The subject property we purchased 2 years ago. We own on both sides of the road, as has been stated. There's a property that's on the north side that is undevelopable essentially because it's not large enough. The property that is to be vacated terminates into the side of a home, and in that piece on either side of the roadway, there's not enough land to be able to develop those either. So we are requesting to vacate the road so that the property can be utilized in a better planning for the city and for us, and that's what we're here for.
All right. All right. Thank you. Nick, could you get me the sign-up list, please? Thanks. Thank you so much. Great. Okay. First, we'll have Alan S. Bachman.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us have an opportunity to talk this evening. I'm Alan Bachman. I'm representing Matthew and Valerie Briggs. That's the property to the north. of the subject development and the abutting the vacating road. That road leads to 2 of their lots. And so, and there's been some talk about the litigation. You see it in their packet. And as I understand it, we're still under the jurisdiction of the court in this matter. The judge will be reviewing what happens with the road vacation and the subdivision PRUD at some point. In that order, with the courts being worked on as we speak. In the case of this ordinance, what we would respectfully request, just so there isn't any argument about it, we really want to try to put this to an end, you know, in terms of any type of dispute between people, is to make it clear in the ordinance that if this road is vacated, that there is that 36-foot road that's been talked about in the plat that does replace it and goes to the Briggs property. Rather than just have an ordinance vacating the road, which we think would put us in a position where we'd have to appeal that because it doesn't have a replacement road in the ordinance. Now, I don't think there's any dispute about allowing this replacement road in it. There is some dispute of, as a minimum, if you wouldn't mind making sure that that's in your decision, I think that would at least be a major factor in whether all of a sudden it's a decision that we have to appeal at that point. So we want to make sure they have a replacement road, that you should make findings of fact and conclusions of law about the vacation. I think that becomes a little easier to do when you discuss in your ordinance or your decision how there is going to be this replacement access for the 2 Briggs's parcels for Matthew and Valerie Briggs. And so please take your time, dot your I's, cross your T's. I know it's a little painful, but it helps everybody if all that happens so we can finally put this to an end. And I look forward, even in my own office, taking that file, sticking it in a cabinet, and not having to look at it again. So are there any questions? And I know Matthew Briggs wants to speak. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Right. Thanks. All right. Doug Farr, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. Doug Farr on behalf of the Taylors today. And I think Mr. Bachman gave us some good background on why we're here. I handed out a packet just to kind of reference some documents since I don't have the fancy slides the city has. If you turn to the first tab and turn to the 3rd page, under that first tab, you're going to see what was approved for the final plat approval. That's still in dispute and will be resolved in the courts following this meeting. But as you can see, there is shaded in the right-of-way that currently exists with the city, that the city owns. And parcel 1, there is no replacement road in this approved map, but parcel 1 is what the developer has said will be the replacement map. What the city council's job today is to do is determine whether there will be any person will be materially injured. And I'm here to say that the Taylors and the Tices, who are neighbors, believe that they will be materially injured. They will suffer substantial and special damages if the road is vacated because it impacts the water drainage. If any of you on the council were here before, you know about the water flooding issues at this property. The city actually built a berm and spent $30,000 and built that berm where the right-of-way exists because that's where the water has been flowing. The irrigation ditch was designed next to the right-of-way to come from Hates Creek and go through the property. And what this plan does, if we vacate this right-of-way and relocate it, it will impact the water drainage and impact our client's property. It's the developer's burden to prove that there's not going to be material injury, and the city will then have to make that finding that there won't be material injury, and I don't think the developer can satisfy that burden. If you turn to tab 2, and I apologize for talking quickly, but I want to use my time efficiently. This is the geostrata report that the developer obtained, and under the first heading, design criteria, under the second bullet, after talking to the city engineer, Andy Thompson, this geostrata said that the city required detention must be provided for a 100-year storm event. The approved plat does not satisfy that requirement. If you go to tab 4, my clients hired an engineer. This is Ensign Engineering's report. Under the first paragraph, numbered paragraph, it recognizes that 100-year storm event need, but says it is only calculated to handle less than a 50-year storm event. So it doesn't even satisfy the requirements. So not only is the detention basin not going to meet the requirements the city put forward, but it's smaller and it's being relocated. So the water is being diverted elsewhere, which we believe will cause problems. The final tabs, 5 and 6, are pictures of current pictures in the last few months of light rainstorms where the water pools in front of the Taylor's property. We believe that will be significantly increased with the addition of impervious surfaces, especially altering the way that the water is being relocated. Final thing is there was no upstream water study. Hates Creek has 2 18-inch pipes that feed into it, into an 18-inch pipe. They have the ability to fully open those up, and it wouldn't be able to handle that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Cam Preston.
My name's Cam Preston. I'm with Ensign Engineering in Layton, 1485 West Hillfield Road, Layton. I'm here representing the Tices. They hired me to come out and kind of just assess what the approved plans, look at the drainage. Just a couple things that are of concern is you go out there, I mean, my first impression of the site visit is a berm's been built. There's a slope inlet. It looks like a detention pond. I mean, the water comes down. It looks like it was built to be a detention pond, and those new design plans don't address that. I know that in some of our discussions with Andy that Hates Creek could be used as a detention pond, but as soon as I got done with the meeting, I made a phone call to Dan Robinson, and who's at Hates Creek Irrigation that manages it. His first response was, he has a moral obligation that I know we're in a drought right now, but if we do hit a spot where we get more water and he has that stored, and we get a 100-year storm event, he is obligated to open both of those up and let them go. So with the current plans, some concerns are they are showing to pipe that drainage ditch, but they just run that pipe up to the Briggs property to where it's just daylit, which really, if you look at with the new Lot 1, that cuts off any access to the city has to get up there and maintain that opening to make sure that flow is happening. And so really one of the biggest concerns that I see at the plan is the proposed plan, that Lot 1, which is where it's on top of where that vacated right-of-way. They've got the detention pond in the back. You've got the drainage from Hates Creek. I mean, essentially, in my opinion, you're creating a drainage problem for that lot. I mean, the Taylors have been susceptible to drainage. The future lot owner that buys Lot 1 has got all types. It's got the detention pond from the proposed subdivision in the back. It's got off-site drainage problems from Hates Creek. And so really, you've got a house with a basement, and you're going to try to run water all around it. And typically, that doesn't work out very well. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Spencer Prince, but you spoke already, right? And then Craig Larson, please.
Hi, my name's Craig Larson. I am part of the developer group. I am also a registered professional engineer, civil engineer in 75% of the United States. Currently, obviously, the street dead ends because there's no connection with the adjacent city with some coordination there. As far as vacating it, if it is not vacated, I don't know what other purpose it serves besides to be a field of weeds or fire hazard or whatnot. It's currently not being used as a street. We purchased the 2 parcels. One is undevelopable. The 2 parcels to the east of us that also abut the right-of-way, they're currently undevelopable. By vacating the right-of-way, all 3 parcels can then become developable versus have to stay vacant. There's no material injury that comes with the right-of-way vacation. We're here for a right-of-way vacation, which by the court of law we've been instructed that this is a separate item than anything that has been proposed in the past to occur on this property or could be proposed in the future. That the purpose is for right-of-way vacation only and not for these other items. Now, speaking of that, everybody has what has been proposed in the back of their heads, and we recognize that and feel we've come up with a good solutions and have tried to work with adjacent property owners so that we might be able to give them some peace of mind, building a dam in front of the house to the west of us, essentially, with the road, and providing access to the Briggs property to the east of us so that it is developable. And of course, we have property rights, just like our neighbors have property rights, and we want those to be recognized, and we have followed the city ordinances and requirements as necessary and as been directed. We've provided the detention for the 10-year storm as required by city ordinance. The city ordinance does not require a 100-year storm. We've provided additional storage to replace the current storage that is right there in place right now that was built. That was built, we have been told by the previous city engineer that that was built without calculations. It was kind of a back of the envelope thing, and that it was not necessarily the city's money, but the contractor's bond that actually paid for that, and not the city.
All right. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Matt Briggs.
Hi, I'm Matt Briggs. I'm the one that owns the property to the east of what we're talking about here, and I want to explain to you where I come from on this deal. I bought the home up there 15 years ago, and then a year later I bought the property back there, and I knew that the city had a piece in the middle of it. So before I purchased it, I came down here and I talked to the city engineer, and he assured me that because I owned the three sides of that property, that anytime I wanted it, that the city would vacate it to me. He also assured me that there would be access to that because the city owns the right-of-way there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I believe the city should just go ahead and keep that road. That's the only way it's going to be fair to everybody here. Because what they're proposing is to have you vacate the property to them, then they give me a piece of property. They deed it to me so that I own it, I'm responsible for it, I have the liability of it. But he just assured me that I'm not allowed to fence it, I'm not allowed to control it in any way, but yet I'm supposed to pay the taxes on it, maintain it, and accept the liability of owning that piece of property, but not being able to control who goes on it and does what. So my question to you people is, would any one of you accept a deal like that? Because that's not good. And the only way to be fair, have the city own that piece of property. They own it now. You guys don't have to give that away. It can stay right the way it is. He can build his subdivision coming off of a city road. I can put my lots in coming off of a city road when I have it vacated to me. The piece I've got surrounded by three sides. Let it be the city road from there back to where it's paved. Everybody wins. Nobody gets hurt. I've spent the last year and a half of my life, I've spent thousands upon thousands of dollars trying to make the city council understand that there's certain rules and laws that you have to follow. And one of them is that you don't do any harm to anybody. And I feel like I've been harmed. Like I say, I've spent thousands of dollars. I'm a small business owner. I've spent days upon days upon days working on this deal when I could be working making money. And I don't see a fair way to do this without somebody feeling like they've got screwed, basically, unless the city just keeps that piece of property and lets everybody come off of it. And I think that's the only way to be fair about this. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Valerie Briggs.
Hi, Valerie Briggs, property owner to the east. I
keep hearing everybody on the development side talk about, you know, how they want to take this piece and reassemble it for their better good. And as a business owner, I understand trying to make the most of what you have. They're very motivated by greed and greed only. I moved to Kaysville because I thought the people here were good, that this could be a good hometown and we could stay here. This has rocked my faith in that belief, what I've seen and what I've heard throughout this experience the last few years. All we want is access to our property, what we were promised for years by what was, you know, city engineer. His word was good. We don't want any money. We don't care about the development. Do whatever they want with their property. But we will not be trampled upon and be taken advantage because of friendships or people that want to jump through loopholes. I simply won't stand for that. I won't be run over in this mess. We still believe there's some good in this world, and I hope that there's some here on the City Council, and I hope you understand. We want no money. We seek no harm, but we will not be chained up to some development because of somebody else's greed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren Hammond.
Darren Hammond, Mayor and Council members, thank you for your time and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide you with a little background from Council's perspective, counsel for the developer. You have a statute in front of you that asks you to determine whether a good cause exists to vacate this right-of-way and whether or not anybody is materially harmed as a result. I see nothing in this statute that discusses water issues, and so I think you can automatically set those aside. Water issues are irrelevant to whether or not this right-of-way can or should be vacated. Water issues are relevant to the development, and they are relevant to the final plat approval that we seek eventually in this matter, but not tonight. Tonight is not a night where we discuss water issues. So you'll see on the diagram there's this little section of property that the city does have the right to develop, but there's really no place for this road to go. There's really no reason that it has to be in this location. And the Briggses would be able to eventually have access through this right-of-way if they wanted to. In fact, they could probably drive over it now, but without it being paved, without the city improving it, it's not useful to them. And so as it is now, they're not using it. And what we're coming in and proposing is that the parcel 1 on the map, which Mr. Farr showed you earlier, that would be the access for the Briggs to replace the right-of-way which they would have right now. So that parcel 1 would give them the access. It gives them the same thing that they have now. So is anybody harmed by this proposed right-of-way? No, nobody is harmed. Mrs. Briggs stood up here a few minutes ago and said that all that they want is access. Well, we are still giving them access. They will still have access as a result. Nobody's taking advantage of anybody here. Nobody's trampling on anybody's rights. The Briggses will not be cut off from access. Right now, the city is under no obligation to pave or develop this right-of-way. And actually what we are proposing is to come in and make it accessible, make it usable by the Briggs. Right now they can't use it, and so under the proposal which we are providing, which is of course the entire scope of the proposal isn't in front of you tonight, just the vacation of the right-of-way is. Under the entire proposal, the Briggses will have better use, better access to their property. And based upon that, we think that there is plenty to satisfy the statute, that good cause exists for the vacation, and that nobody will be materially injured as a result. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think it's Jared Henderson or Jenny. Sorry.
That's okay.
Tell me your name again.
Janelle.
Janelle. I'm so
Janelle
sorry.
In 1956, my parents purchased the property at 719 East Center Street. And at that time, it included 3 acres, of which the bottom half of our pasture eventually was sold to the Briggs, and it was for personal reasons. The concern that I have is that there is a creek that is attached at the bottom, which is my property. Here's the Briggs property, and then there's that little stretch, and then the rest that is assembled, and it's accessed into the rest of my property with a home and walnut grove. Ever since the Pences was approached to develop the Stewart's land, I have been harassed. I have been annoyed. I have received threatening phone calls about if I don't sell my one property for building, that they will come after me. And now this little piece of property that we rely on for water source, and also there's the aesthetic environmental aspect of that water. And I grew up with that water at the base of at that time our property, and I can attest to the fact that there is a flooding issue there. Every year that it would flood and get real boggy, which caused problems for our horses, but we dealt with it. And I think that we're losing too much of our quality environment with buildings and things. And you can go back on the Briggs property. It's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's quiet. The upper part of the pasture, we've tried to maintain that also. We've been threatened, well, we need you to move your fence lines, and I've refused to do that because those fence lines are on the property as it was surveyed clear back in 1956. So this becomes an emotional situation for me, and I agree that the ethics here need to really be looked at, that there is money, and that at the base of this, of the Stewarts wanting the money when they sold the top property, and they had promised that they would sell to me first, and then they reneged and went with the higher bidders. So yeah, I have a little bit of an issue there because I wanted to maintain the quality of the life that we've enjoyed there since 1956. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. That is all the names that we have on our public hearing sign-up sheet. So I will close the public hearing, and we will reconvene in a couple minutes for our city council meeting. Thank you. All right. I'd like to call the February 7th, 2019 City Council meeting to order. First thing we'll do is have our opening provided to us by Councilmember Larry Page.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this day that we can be here as a governing body of Kaysville to talk about the events that are transpiring here in this city. We're thankful for this opportunity of discussion. We're thankful for this opportunity to be a republic, to be able to address concerns the citizens have, and we appreciate so much the wonderful freedoms and opportunities that we enjoy. We're grateful again for this wonderful city, the peaceful environment we live in, the low crime rate, the opportunities that we enjoy, and we would ask that thou would be with us this night and bless us that we'll be able to say those things and do those things and think through our decisions in a pleasing way unto thee. That our minds will be open and there'll be not only a good conversation, but also a meeting of the minds in many ways. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. I'd like to have the audience stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you. First thing we're going to do is recognitions and presentations, and I would like to welcome Tammy Worston to come and give us an update on pickleball courts, please.
Hello. Tammy asked me to come tonight and share a little bit about pickleball and my experience. My name is Verl Kingsford and recently moved to Kaysville last April. And 6 months ago, I had no idea what pickleball was. There's probably maybe a lot of us. Pickleball, just for those who don't know, is kind of played on a court about the third the size of a tennis court, kind of a cross between tennis and ping pong. It's played with a paddle. You can see all these like that, like those, and a ball, kind of like a wiffle ball. And it's can be a real fast-paced sport that can be played recreationally and also professionally. The purses are getting pretty big now with nationals, about $75,000 purse. So it gets really competitive as well. I played sports all my life and coached sports, but I discovered pickleball was quite a bit unique to all the sports that I've played and been exposed to. And it's affected me a lot more on a personal level with things that I've gone through, and really came at a time in my life that I needed it. And I feel like pickleball came, as silly as it might sound, but it came as a tender mercy for me from God. And it's really helped me through a lot. As I said, I moved here to Kaysville. I lived in Riverdale for 24 years, raising our family. I have 3 kids and 8 grandkids, and 2 of my kids are now living out of state with their family, along with 5 of my grandkids. So when I was 23 years old, I developed a tumor in my right hand. And because of the pain that it gave me, the doctors removed it, said it was benign, and in 11 months it had grown back to the same size. The tumor kept growing back every year between 11 to 14 months for the next 11 years, kept growing back until it turned malignant. And that's when it was a turned into a really rare form of aggressive cancer. And they told me if I wanted to live more than 5 years, I needed to have it amputated. So that's what I did. Then a few other health things happened. 10 years ago, my left hand went 90% numb, and with no explanation of what's causing it. 5 years ago, I was grew up all my life playing soccer. I was playing indoor soccer and was slammed into a wall playing indoor, crushed the cartilage in both knees and had to have full knee replacements. Then I woke up one morning about 4.5 years ago and went to step down on the floor and collapsed because I couldn't feel my feet. And I've got 90% neuropathy in my feet and legs. 4 years ago, my wife and I became empty nesters, and 3 years ago, I lost my wife suddenly. She passed away due to a medication interaction suddenly at 48 years old. We'd been married 34 years. 2 years ago, my kids and I made the difficult decision to go ahead and sell the house where we'd raised them for 24 years and bought a house out here in Kaysville, which I have been thoroughly just thrilled to death. The people that I've met here in Kaysville, the neighborhood, everything about it. I've always really worked hard to not allow challenges in life to get me down and discourage me. My whole life I've been involved in church activities, social activities, sports. But now as I moved out to Kaysville, I was in a new neighborhood, new area, new church ward group, kind of a culture shock. Not only moving to a new place, but now I was so actively involved in everything, and especially family and friends, that now, without my wife, having my kids now out of state, it was quite an experience, quite a new experience to get into. I worked really hard to try and rehab my legs and feet so that I could get back into sports. I grew up playing soccer, and one day thought I'm just going to go over and try it, and went over here in Kaysville to an indoor place and was able to sub for somebody who wasn't there, and got on the field, and I grew up playing. I mean, I played soccer for 50 years, and for the first time I went to get the ball and dribble the ball down to go around somebody, and my feet gave out, my knees gave out, my feet with the neuropathy gave out, and I did a nosedive right into the turf. And I tried a few more times, but quickly found that the limitations that I had at that point were such that I may not be able to, at that point, decide I just wasn't going to be able to come back and play soccer. So I kind of was really searching around for something to kind of fill a void, not only competitively, but socially and physically, to try and stay in shape. And one night, I was out driving around, not having my wife around and having kids not around, found myself with a lot more time on my hands, trying to find things to do, and was out driving around Kaysville and saw lights over there at Barnes Park, and just west of the baseball diamonds, and went over to see what it was, and there were all these people running around with these strange paddles and hitting this ball. And as I got closer, boy, this really looked interesting, and I kind of sat in the car for probably an hour, just sat and watched. I did, and then I did that probably a couple times that week. I came over and I just kind of watched from the car. I thought, oh wow, this looks really fun. And the next week, finally decided that I was going to go get a paddle. So I went and got a paddle and got up the nerve. I went out there and just kind of stood and watched people outside the fence and as they were playing. And then Tracy invited me to come on and play on the court, and I was like, no, I've never played. I sat there watching them. They were so good, and she insisted, oh, come on, it doesn't matter, come and play. And they were so good that night. Them, along with others Tammy and several other people that night that were just so welcoming, and to have me play regardless of, I couldn't play, I had to pick up the game, plus I had limitations physically that I was trying to get over hurdles of, to be able to get around and move and things, but just were so welcoming and understanding. And let's see, I guess that week and the weeks that followed, I found myself, like all of us pickleball players, extremely hooked on pickleball. I wasn't sure, at the time with pickleball, with the numbness in my left hand and the neuropathies and my artificial knees, there were a lot of doubts that creep in, that about your ability to do something. But what I found was how welcoming everyone was. Allowed me a chance to really search inside myself and find something that was far more important than just the physical side of being able to get exercise and work my way back physically. But from the emotional side, helped me to be able to fill my emotional bucket and to be able to socialize. And you'll hear anybody that talks about pickleball won't just talk about the pickleball itself and how fun it is, because it is a fun game, competitive game, but the social side of it and the interaction, the connections that you make with people is what I found to be so much more valuable. And that's something that, like I said, it came at a time in my life when I really needed something to grab onto. And I want to thank all those who helped me get into the game, and I also want to thank Kaysville City and all of you that are involved in administrating the city for providing an opportunity to have those courts. Because, like I said, it's far more than offering a game. It offered the means for people to make connections. So I want to thank you for that. So.
Yes. Thank you.
Hello, friends on the City Council. My name's Tammy Worston. I met Verl, as he mentioned, just about 6 months ago in the late summer, playing pickleball at the courts. And I recently saw him at a tournament in Brigham City between Christmas and New Year's. And he was playing in a sanctioned pickleball tournament, and I was complimenting him on being so new to the sport and yet participating in a sanctioned pickleball tournament. And so then he told me a little bit more about his background and his story and how it had just added so much to his life. And he said he wanted to write a letter to the mayor to thank her for the courts. I said, Verl, I've got one better. Can you come and speak at a city council meeting and share it with everybody? So here's your letter, Mayor. Thank you. So it's people like Verl that help feed my passion for pickleball. So thank you so much, Verl. Those pickleball courts have been such a blessing in Kaysville. They've been enjoyed by so many people in and outside of our community. It's been such a bright and happy spot in our city, and I want to publicly thank the City Council for your support in that effort over the last few years. Thank you so much. I could tell you so many stories of what pickleball has done to improve the quality of people's lives. It's truly amazing. The City Recreation Department has done an amazing job with leagues and tournaments, and Tracy Murray is just awesome. She not only does a great job, but she's so kind and welcoming on the pickleball courts to everyone. When we first started our fundraising, not a lot of people had even heard of pickleball, and now most people either play or know someone that plays it. It's a great gathering place where we can get some exercise and socialize with our neighbors and extended neighborhoods. Play at Barnes Park starts at 6 a.m. and the courts are busy until the heat sets in, and they start again in the evening until the lights are out at 11 p.m. The courts are crowded. We have outgrown the 8 courts that we have. There are as many as 16 to 20 people waiting to get on the pickleball courts, and many leave to go try and find other places where they can play, where there are open courts. As you know, only 4 of the 8 courts are lit, which limits the playtime for the early risers and the night owls. Some still play on the unlit courts, which really could be a liability because it's unsafe playing in the dark. I know that the Parks and Recreation Department requested last year for additional lighting, and it was not funded. And my understanding is that they're going to request it again. That is our #1 priority for the courts. I hope they'll get that approval this year. I'm hoping that the City Council will support the upcoming new budget year request to fund the additional lighting to finish that project that we started. I want to focus on building 4 additional courts. I have started fundraising once again to fund the additional courts as a community and pickleball fans. I'm not asking for any funding from the city for extra courts. But we plan to do it ourselves. We have the support of Cole Stevens and the Parks and Recreation Department. As you may know, 12 courts were in the original plan, but we also felt like lighting was equally important. The money only went so far, but it's obvious now that we have too many players for the 8 courts that we have. As I mentioned, leagues and tournaments have been awesome, and with more courts, tournaments especially will bring even more revenue into the city. I have a committee of awesome people helping with fundraising, and they are Mike Roundy, Ray Morgan, Jill Dredge, George Snell, Marie Funk, Ron Hovey, and my husband Alan. We're so grateful for the partnership and support that we've felt from you and our city leaders up to this point. Thanks so much for your willingness to serve and for all your efforts and leadership that you have demonstrated. And we have pickleball fundraising going on at Bowman's Market tomorrow and Saturday. So if you will come and do your grocery shopping and then come show us at the pickleball table your receipt, anybody that's here or that is watching from home, we would love to add you to our fundraising because Bowman's has been so generous to offer to give us 5% of all of the sales from people that we bring in to go to our pickleball fundraising. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
We'll see. Everybody should put that on their Facebook page, especially you, Stro.
It'll go on my
Yeah.
non-existent Facebook page, yes.
We'll all go
All right.
shopping together this
Okay.
weekend, though.
A wise man.
I know, right? See.
Now, we're going to have a department report, community development from Lyle Gibson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. If you'll entertain me a little bit to begin with, I thought I'd, being that we do community development, these are some facts and data that I had shared with the Planning Commission a while back that I thought they found very interesting that I thought I'd share briefly with the City Council, kind of frame a little bit of what we do within community development, and then be reporting on some of the activities we've done pretty much over 2018. So just to shine a little bit on this, a little bit about Kaysville. We're a growing community. You can see in the past few decades we've grown quite a bit. We're about 33,000 people currently within Kaysville. And according to statistics, we're extremely young. Over 40% of those people are under the age of 19. Just to give you a little bit of a profile of who you might find within Kaysville, you can see we're scattered across many different profiles according to this specific report. I just highlighted one specific item, which is that highest group. Calls us babies in bliss. So we're large families, pretty well off in general, at least within that category, pretty tech savvy, and we like to recreate and be outdoors and play. Of course, Kaysville's in a great spot between Ogden and Salt Lake. We all know that, where we're here, and we've got some great amenities around us, access to recreation, education, employment. And so because of that, like the rest of the state, we're still growing. So Utah continues to be one of the fastest growing states in the U.S. Kaysville gets its chunk of that as well. So we know kind of where that growth's going is what this is showing, and we absorb more and more of that every year. So within community development, we're one of the smaller departments within the city, and I've got a lot of great people that work with me that really the credit goes out to them on the things that get done on a day-to-day basis with our building department. We operate business licensing, some code enforcement efforts. A lot of changes happening. I myself am new to my current position. Anne Marie, that's up here as city recorder, has moved on to great things, and she'll do fantastic in that position. But was operating as our current business as our business license officer. So we've had new personnel fill that. We've got vacant spots with planning and development review that need to be filled. And Marcia Cook, who was with the city for about 27 years, recently retired. We've kind of merged her position in together with business licensing into one full-time spot. The city engineer, of course, who's gone that I filled in, and we've also got news of other retirements coming and within our building department, so there will be changes to see there as well. So we've got challenges ahead, a lot of opportunity to learn and grow, but I think a lot of excitement as well with new bodies coming into new positions. So as we're doing on a day-to-day basis, Kaysville again continues to grow. We hold steady post-recession at around 150 new homes every year. That's no exception in 2018, was we were just over that. But we are seeing a new trend go up in essentially basement finishes, but remodels, additions on homes. So as new home growth goes up more or less steady, we can see more permits within that sector. Commercial construction, a lot of TIs, tenant improvements, and others. 2018 was a pretty big year for that. Our business park has quite a bit of new space going in, where we're seeing that growth. And overall, permits in general are up year over year over year. So we're seeing the trend. We're keeping plenty busy, trying to permit and track and inspect a lot of work being done in the city. We've licensed roughly 1,200 businesses in Kaysville. You can see the breakdown that ranges a significant number within home occupations. So your in-home hair salon or a tax accountant, or your commercial businesses. And you can see that trend. We see a little bit of growth in that. So that red line, or red bar along the bottom indicates that commercial growth. You can kind of discount that last figure because it's January 2019. We still hadn't received all the renewals for businesses, so we're still working on that. But you do note a pretty big drop in the home business in particular. And if you'll recall, we changed our ordinances recently to where many of those are not required to be licensed. Partly the reason that we did that was so we could return to collecting fees from those who did wish to be licensed. But still, a bulk of those businesses chose to continue licensing and maintain that. We work with the Planning Commission, who you're all familiar with, and a couple of you have served on that commission. Just to give you an idea, much like the City Council, they're meeting twice a month. We had 21 meetings during 2018. They heard 50 conditional use permits, 23 rezones, dealt with 19 different subdivisions, and other items such as variances, new ordinances, interpretations. Had 17 unique items there. So that keeps them plenty busy. Hopefully, and I believe they are doing a good job with those that have been appointed, and it's a fantastic group to work with. 2019, on top of keeping up with the usual business, we're looking hopefully to do some more planning efforts that we can look forward to as a community and as a council as those come along. So it's going to be a lot to add to the plate, but we're excited to see what comes from those as we work with the council on perhaps pursuing these items and putting them together. That concludes my presentation and quick update where we're at.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
No. Thanks, Lyle.
Thanks. Thank you very much. All right. Any declaration of conflicts of interest?
No.
All right. Go on to our consent agenda. I believe Councilmember DeCare has asked for B, C, and E to be removed from the consent agenda. Would anybody like to move the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Councilmember Adams.
So we're just moving A and D forward, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, Councilmember DeCare.
With regard to items B and C, I just wanted to take a moment and publicly thank and congratulate both Anne-Marie Plaisir for all of her work in the Planning and Zoning and Business Development Office for 15 years or so, and being promoted to our new Kaysville City Recorder. She's here with us this evening. And I also wanted to publicly recognize Maria Devereaux for her 3 or 4 years as Kaysville City Recorder, and for her promotion to Kaysville City. It may not sound like a promotion, but Kaysville City Deputy Recorder, and she's also going to be working with Nick Mills, our legal team. So just wanted to give some public recognition to those two fine city staff employees. So.
All right, and then E, award for the bid of Schick Lane Stormwater Project.
And I think that one I just wanted a little more clarification on, just kind of the scope of it and what's going on and things along those lines. So.
And we do have Josh Belknap here.
Right.
Is this something that you
Yes,
could
correct.
explain to us? Thanks.
Excuse me. So this is a project that has been being discussed and planned and in the works since about 2015. There are various aspects of this project, but the essence of it is there is a detention basin on 200 North near the I believe it's Bonneville Lane. There's a new church there that was recently built. It was observed that that detention basin was not functioning properly. The city at that time started to look at the reasons why, eventually arriving at a point where the determination was made that we need to do something, either looking at the basin itself or at the very least doing something with the amount of water that we were sending downstream unattenuated, which means not detained. The city approached the Nature Conservancy, who owns property at the west end of Schick Lane, about the possibility of being able to discharge this water there. And the Nature Conservancy said, you know, we can do that, but we do have some concerns with unattenuated flows coming down here from a volume standpoint, but also water quality, what's in the water. And when that water gets here, it has a tendency to sprawl out if it's a heavy rainflow. So it's kind of uncontrolled where it's going. So design was undertaken to potentially deal with this. And at the around the same time in 2016, the city operates under what is called an MS4 permit with the state of Utah. That allows Kaysville City to collect stormwater and convey it in pipes and other networks and discharge it into public water bodies. As that MS4 permit was renewed, there was a new requirement included that some of you may have heard of. It's called Low Impact Development, or LID. And that requires things like retention, not allowing water or as much water to leave a site that's being developed. And the major focus there is focusing on water quality. So as the city saw this coming down the pike, we saw this as an opportunity of not only can we work with Nature Conservancy to find something that works, but we can also better meet these requirements of the MS4 to treat water. And this project proposes treating water by removing trash and debris before it enters the wetlands in the Great Salt Lake. It removes sediment, and it also removes heavy metals, nitrogen, phosphorus, and hydrocarbons from that water. So this project, we had originally pursued it in FY18 and had been pursuing a grant with the state of Utah for roughly half the funding, and felt very confident in our chances in speaking with state personnel. However, we didn't get the grant that we thought was coming, so we held off on the project, kind of reconsidered, and made a couple of changes, decreasing the estimate on the project, and then now pursuing that. So this is something that not only meets these water quality requirements, and I think as LID continues to move forward, it's becoming more and more apparent the not only responsibility but requirement that we have. But it also provides an opportunity. This basin can now be, permanently taken offline, and we can do something else with that. And that's now part of that Schick Farms area, and the city can utilize that for different purposes now. So those are kind of the two big benefits from that project. So.
Okay, thank you. I neglected to have us move B and C. Would somebody like to move B and C?
I'll make a motion that we move consent items B and C.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Let's go with Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 We didn't do comments. Just kidding. Aye.
All right.
Inside joke.
Okay, very good. All right. Sorry about that. So back to E, the award for the bid of Schick Lane Stormwater Project. Thank you for the update on that. Any questions from council on that?
Not a question, comment, but
Okay.
do you want me to wait?
Any questions?
I've got
Councilmember
questions.
Adams, go ahead.
So is this basin, is it the one in that HOA property we just took on, or is it further west?
No, it's that basin, just there east of Bonneville Lane. There's the pavilion there, and I think they planted some trees there. There's a basin right by the power lines.
And so what do we anticipate doing with that? Filling it in?
So Parks has discussed options. I don't know exactly what they've decided to pursue there, but having those options of, we could backfill, we could utilize it for something different. Right now, they have to drag mow that throughout the year, and the difficulty and onus on them to do so is something that they also look forward to alleviating. So.
And so the lack of that detention isn't going to cause issues elsewhere?
No.
Obviously, I'm sure we've studied that.
Yeah, so the only issue was just Nature Conservancy saying, look, we can take the water, but there's got to be conditions for us taking that water.
And well, let me back up. Did you get my email?
The email.
Maybe, you might not have gotten it. Because I can spare some of these questions if you did. I emailed you this week about this project. Did you receive that?
I received an email, and.
With questions regarding this project?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe it is in my junk box or something. Did you happen to respond, or?
I had spoken with Shane, and we're here to answer those questions.
Oh, okay. Well, that's news to me. I've been strongly encouraged by both those parties you just mentioned to actually reach out beforehand and get these questions answered. So this feels a little over-labored.
I'm happy to address that, Mayor, too, if you'd like me to.
Shane?
In previous council meetings, we've asked you to let me know if you have a question of, especially of Josh Belknap. You guys had not only an incident where you had some legal proceedings that took place between each other, but also you were removed as the liaison to the Public Works Department, and at that time, the constant requests for information, the council asked you to just ask me, and so I'm happy to track down that information for you if you'd like me to at any time.
Okay. Anyway, so is the Nature Conservancy in the packet? It talks about how it's a joint venture. Are they coupling any cost with us on this?
A very minor cost, but the major thing is being able to utilize that property to discharge and treat the water, where otherwise we wouldn't have a location to do so.
They are financially assisting, though?
Yes, so working with Chris Brown, like I said, is very minimal, but he's assisted in some of the minor items, fencing, shaping of berms with equipment, things like that.
Also, it's kind of an in-kind assistance, or it's
not
necessarily cash.
Correct.
Some of the HDP on there, contractor it's put out for them to supply and install, and some of it was just put out for them to install. Are we furnishing some of that?
We are, yeah. So there's, I believe, 24-inch pipe that we had in our stock, and we're utilizing that in the project.
That's great. And then as far as the other HDPE, are you anticipating that to be fusion welded HDPE or corrugated ADS?
So some of it is corrugated ADS, but there are some sections of fusion welded HDPE.
I know the materials in the yard is corrugated HDPE, so
Right.
obviously we anticipate, and that's great, I think, by the way, of using that. That's awesome. So the remaining HDPE, do we anticipate that to be fusion weld or corrugated?
On the project?
Yes.
Or you're talking about in the yard?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the remainder of that, I believe, is all fusion welded, butt fusion HDPE.
And the reason I raised that question is it's rooted in a concern of cost. So have we evaluated the cost? Is there a specific need why fusion weld needs to be used versus other product that is about a third of the cost?
Yeah, so a lot of these locations are crossings for Nature Conservancy where they're needing to take equipment across locations that are piped. So the areas where we're using the fusion pipe, we're using a thicker walled. We didn't want to use the ADS in that case for the structural reasons.
So, for example, when UDOT uses this pipe on I-15, the corrugated, the cheaper material, my concern here to get to the nugget is the cost of these materials. It can be very exorbitant, and HDPE is great for high pressure purposes, as you know. I'm not teaching you anything yet, but it's a little bit unnecessary for a storm drain gravity scenario. Where I-15 is loaded with this stuff and bearing much greater loads than this will probably bear, is there any way that we could take a second look at that?
I don't know UDOT's exact requirements, but my understanding is, and unless you're buying a specialized class of corrugated ADS type pipe that has structural rating, you're not allowed to use that in new construction on a UDOT right away, where there's going to be a structural
it was just
loading.
Used latent interchange.
And that could have been in a non-load bearing location, but that is my understanding, is that if it's going to be taking vehicle or equipment traffic, that they don't accommodate that.
Do we anticipate fusing that then, or is it all going to be on the contractor?
I believe some of the fusing is going to be done by our crews. We have a fusing machine. I don't know if we have all of that being done, but that has been the discussion, is the participation there, as well as some other items that we've done internally to reduce the cost.
Got it. I'll save a comment for the comment section. Do we have to do this? Are we out of compliance right now? Because the water's, well, we're detaining it, but then as far as overflow, it's probably heading to the Nature Conservancy now, right? Currently, right?
Yes, some of the water is heading to the Nature Conservancy. What we're trying to avoid is damage to property, and as development continues, the amount of water is going to increase. We also have that concern on stewardship with the environment, meeting those LID requirements and treating that water.
So if the pond were just to stay and we were to fix, let me back up. Did you say the pond is not working currently?
The detention basin is not functioning. Previous estimates from 2 different engineering firms are to the tune of $180,000 to $230,000-ish to try and mediate those issues. But that keeps the basin in place where there is benefit to the Parks Department to be able to utilize that for something else.
I think we need to start wrapping this up.
So are we out of any compliances right now, though, with the watershed that we are introducing into the
I don't believe so. I don't think there's any compliance issues with not detaining that at this time. It's just trying to accommodate the downstream user.
Okay. Well, one more. So the packet doesn't tell us who you're recommending as the contractor. And forgive me if it does, but I don't believe it does.
My apologies if it doesn't. The contractor is J-Rock Construction in the bid packet. They are the low bid under the engineer's estimate as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I now entertain a motion to move this item.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Schick Lane Stormwater Wetlands Project.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember DeCare. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
Aye.
Do we want to have comment first?
Comment.
Oh,
Sorry.
forgive me, you're right. Comments.
Strike two tonight.
I just
DeCare.
wanted to throw some, give Josh Belknap and his group, some thanks for putting this all together, for your work on this. It's been an arduous process, I know that. A couple of years down the road now, we've finally got this wrapped up and we're moving this whole thing forward. So thank you for your time and considerations on this, to you and your department. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Adams.
I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Councilmember Garn.
Actually, I'm sorry. Let me just quickly state, I do apologize to the city manager for omitting that and emailing directly to Mr. Belknap. And so it would have helped if a response could have been given, hey, please refer your comments or questions to the manager. So I would have appreciated that. That could have spared us some of these questions, and I would have directed them to you. So my apologies.
Okay, Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 On the exorbitant HDPE, it's an A.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Okay. Okay, now we're going to our action item, vacation of 0.14 acres of right-of-way on 100 North Street at approximately 650 East. We'll have a presentation by Nick Mills.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. It's good to be with you this evening. I won't go back through the facts of the street vacation as we just discussed it earlier during the public hearing. I will address one thing that came up, and as the city sees it, the drainage issues are issues that can be addressed at the platting phase, so we don't feel like that is any reason to approve or deny it. It shouldn't affect your decision this evening. All that's on the table this evening is merely whether the city wants to maintain ownership of the road. If the council determines to approve this, we'd ask that you make the following findings of fact and conclusions of law and include them as part of your motion. The first finding of fact would be that you would find that the road terminates and does not connect to any other roads at the east end, that you would find that good cause exists to vacate the road. You'd find that no material harm to others would come by vacating the road, that you'd find that vacating the road would allow for development of this property, which would be a benefit to the city, and that you would find that access should be granted to the homeowners to the east, which I believe are the Briggs. And you'd make the following conclusion of law, that vacating the road will not affect any existing access or easements based on Utah Code 10-9A 609.5 in the case South Salt Lake versus Potter, 2018 Utah 21. When you make your motion, you don't have to go back through that. You can just say, if you decide to approve it, we approve it with the motion and the findings that the city attorney outlined. You can also choose to deny the vacation of the road, and we'd submit it at that point. You're on.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any? All right. We did previously have a public hearing on this prior to council meeting. So we will go to council questions. Any questions from council specifically on this issue?
A quick one off the top. Were those
Councilmember Adams.
Were those findings in the packet?
No, they weren't.
And so all your findings are in favor of vacating the land. Is that?
Well, if you choose to approve it, those are the findings you should make. You're not required to approve it, but if you approve it, those are the findings that would support your decision.
And the court case you referenced, a quick synopsis of such?
Yeah, South Salt Lake vacated a road, and if memory serves, some of the adjoining property owners were in dispute over whether the access, it was a similar type situation, whether the access that they would have had under the road still existed. The court said that vacating the road did not affect the access or the easements that had been there before.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Barber, you had a question.
My question was just on all of those contingencies that you put on there. Can you talk more about that final one, the court case that needs to be referenced, just about that it shouldn't affect any easements or access, and how that applies here where it will affect access?
Yeah, so there are explicit easements that people have, and there are prescriptive easements that people have. And the vacating of the road doesn't affect any of those easements that are in existence. It just takes the road from a public road and distributes it to the property owners. It doesn't, you can't block access to the property by vacating the road. People can still traverse the property and would still have access to their property. You can't sandbag somebody just because you don't like them. They still have that right to cross the property.
Nick, when you speak, can you speak more into the mic?
Yeah, I apologize.
Yeah,
Thanks, ma'am.
thanks. Any other questions on this? Okay. Councilmember Adams, question.
Well, I guess we'll have a comment section.
Yeah, we will. Okay. Any other questions from council?
My last question.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
And I apologize, I have the least experience with this one. So when you say that we should put, if we were to create this motion in favor, that access should be granted to the Briggs, what type of stipulations and conditions can be attached to that to ensure that they have adequate access and rights to their property to just protect them? Does it define what access actually is, what it looks like, how much access it is?
I'm not exactly sure that you can define exactly, X amount of feet.
Okay.
Typically, you maintain the access that you would have had. So
Okay.
if it's a road, you can't give them access via sidewalk.
Yeah.
Right? You can't say, well, we're going to install a gondola or something
Okay.
like that. If you're vacating a road, they would have access the same way.
In the same manner that they
If you were to
before.
vacate a trail or something like that, they couldn't come back and say, well, you vacated a trail, we now want a road.
Yep.
But they could maintain the easement prescriptive rights that they had.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move that we grant vacation of .14 acres of right-of-way at 100 North and approximately 650 East, with the stipulations of the finding of the city attorney attached.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Decatur and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Comments? Councilmember Adams.
Yeah. If we keep the right-of-way, or at least keep the leverage of the right-of-way until we see a use and some engineering that appeases all parties, then we keep leverage on our side. Once the right-of-way is gone, the leverage is gone, and I don't think this is a good idea. I think that it's a very simple thing. I've seen an alternate plat. It still yields 5 lots at this actually larger square footage, if not equivalent to the existing 5-lot plat. And it's sad to see that 18 months has gone by and this is not the first time that I've sat in this chair and watched such an issue. I will say it does seem that we roll out red carpet at times for people who are really affecting and causing harm to the tribe of Kaysville, to people who have been here. I haven't seen anybody say, don't let this development go through on the opposing side. I haven't heard that. They're supportive of it. But now, because we're so unwilling to just say, hey, look, developer, I'm sorry, we would like the full right-of-way extended. It's our right-of-way right now. And it's not, when I say ours, it belongs to the shareholders of this city, which is everyone who pays taxes. So to just give it away For example, if we were without any kind of stipulations like, look, we'll give it away, but you've got to improve it fully, because we have some concerns in that area of flooding. We have concerns of, this, that, the other. And if that criteria is met, we'll give it away. We'll deed it over to this development. If this were Layton, it'd be a fat chance. You'd improve that into a full right-of-way, because they follow their standards. I'll echo the previous mayor, Mayor Hyatt, who didn't agree, who thought, hey, this really ought to be extended. We ought not to be allowing these little pieces to come off of our right-of-ways like this, not in a scenario where we have a right-of-way already, which is what we have. And now we're giving that away. I strongly urge this council to take a second thought here and to realize that we represent everyone in this room. And we represent what's going on here. We represent this right-of-way, and as representatives of the right-of-way and stewards over it, are we doing the best that we can? Are we lobbying the best that we can for the affected parties? Again, there's a scenario in town now where people have spent over $20,000 in legal fees, and a judge ordered it to come back to us.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember DeCare.
I've been intimately familiar with this project for well over 2 years. I served on the Planning Commission for 6 years prior to this. I have looked at this at every angle I did then, 2 years ago. I have followed through with it over the past 2 years. I've looked at it now, and I see absolutely no reason at all why this vacation cannot be granted. So it does benefit the Briggs for this vacation. You guys know. So we have looked at this at every angle, and it connects your property, essentially. It connects your two pieces of property. I sat in that chair where Councilmember Adams is until 1 o'clock in the morning at a Planning Commission meeting and explained this ad nauseum at every angle 2.5 years ago. So where I'm at with this, I have absolutely no problems at all with granting this vacation.
Okay. Councilmember Gurn.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's important to, I always want to ask myself the question, what's my role? I'm not an engineer, not a civil engineer, not an attorney. I don't know anything about the lawsuit other than there was one, and I don't know that I want to know anything about it. But it is my role to understand the process as a city council person. What is the process that we follow? And I'm persuaded that the vacation itself does not impact, and I was also here on the city council at the time when we did go through a lot of different reports and conflicting engineering reports on whether it would improve the flooding or reduce the potential for flooding, or whether it's better now, and all those sorts of issues. But this simply allows the property to be developed. Another phase of the process would be to look at the specific plans and see if they make ordinance and if they meet the ordinances, and if in the opinion of those who do make this decision for the city, that those concerns are adequately addressed. And clearly one of the conditions is access, and we discussed this 2 years ago too, that we'll discuss later, is appropriate access to the Briggs property. But I think tonight that's not this part of the process, and so I would agree with Councilmember DeCare.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, just unless I'll stand in line if you don't mind.
Right. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, this is a sensitive deal. There's no doubt about it. I think that there's a lot of legitimate concerns that's come from the residents of that area, and there's no question about that. I believe that every one of these concerns will be addressed. I mean, there is a process in the city that we go through that'll address these processes, and I think that there's protection for the people of that area, and I really believe that that'll be the case. And I think we need to focus what we're looking at tonight and understand that as things roll forward, that these things and all these concerns will be addressed.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber, do you have any comments? No. Councilmember Adams.
I'll just state what I think the purpose of this right-of-way is, you know, to us, to the city, is that right now it is a control point for the flooding issues, you know. The Hayes Creek Irrigation Pond is classified as a high-risk pond. It's just above this. Now, I'm not saying there's not a way to work around all these issues. There is, and I can see it. But we're not taking that path. At least that path is not on the table. So right now we're giving up our leverage for our access, and I'd like to know, you know, does the plat have to go back through? Or does the plat that they submitted before and the previous council approved, does it go through? I think or is it going to?
Give me one moment.
Thank you.
Could we have an understanding of who the gentleman is that our attorney's consulting with?
I'll say no, counsel. I am.
Would you come to the mic? Thank you.
I am actually outside counsel for the city, hired by your insurance company to defend that lawsuit. My name is Brian Bollinger with Richards Brandt Miller Nelson.
Thank you.
And I can answer your question. Right now,
please.
The plat it was approved last December. The court has requested that the council prepare findings of fact and conclusions of law to support or explain that conclusion. We've reviewed all the transcripts from those proceedings. Each council member's comments will be included in those findings of facts and presented to the council. That is where it stands right now. After those findings of fact and conclusions of law are adopted by the council, if that's how it proceeds, then this matter would likely continue before the court.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll bring
Councilmember
those,
Barber.
Thank you, Mayor.
Those
You'll bring
will be
those separately.
Yes, those will be submitted through.
So they'll follow a similar pattern to what we're doing tonight. Today it is just the vacation. Every other piece will be brought before us again.
Well, the court has, since no ordinance was entered following the vacation in 2018,
17, yeah.
That the court requested that this matter be renoticed, presented in public hearing, and an ordinance be entered with findings of fact so that it can determine whether substantial evidence supports the conclusion made by the council. That's the same process that the court has found or determined to have the plat approval go through, just where we've been asked to come back to the council.
Okay. So, can I ask one more?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So, the decision tonight will remain just for the vacation.
That is the only agenda item on the calendar for tonight.
And everything else will be revisited. Okay.
Are you implying there is a next step in the courts, regardless?
The court has requested.
Adams. Sorry.
The court has requested that the findings of fact and conclusions of law adopted by the council, it's anticipated those will be reviewed by the court to determine whether they demonstrate substantial evidence to support the council's decision.
Either way?
Yes.
Of the decision?
Yes.
Okay, so going back to my question, it's maybe not for you, and it's been deferred to Nick. So will the plat, does the plat automatically go through? Or does it have to go through prelim and final plat?
The final plat right now has been approved. It was approved when we heard this before. You still need to adopt findings of fact and conclusions of law.
So essentially the plat is on the table and approved?
Yes. Findings of fact and conclusions of law are just the reasons why you did what you did and the law that supports the reasoning facts that you did what you did.
And I think the court could then come back and say that's not good enough. Do it again. They could come back and say it's null. They could come back and say almost anything.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Is there a way we can, on our own, separate from this vacation item, say we want to have the plat resubmitted, completely start over the whole process?
I'm going to let Nick speak to this too, but we also need to recognize that Mr. Prince and the applicant does have legal rights too, and that I don't know if we can ask him to do something and he'll do it, but he also has a legal ability to say, no, you've already done that, and produce his evidence as well. So, if you have something else to add
The previous council approved the plat. That's where it's at right now. The court's asked the city council to adopt this ordinance tonight with findings of fact and conclusions of law, and then the court could do what it wanted with that, or however the court ruled. But as of right now, the city has approved a final plat on this piece of property.
Councilmember DeCare?
So essentially the way that I see this is where it moves forward from here, to Councilmember Adams' point, it's all contingent on the courts, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Right, yeah. I mean, we have no, okay, all right. If the courts say, hey, final plat's fine, great, it was already adopted, it's done, it's approved, or the courts come back and say, just like they did here with this matter here before us this evening, could say, no, you need to revisit the final plat and massage things or take a look at things or whatever, just like I said, just like we've had to revisit this whole vacation process. So that's a clear understanding of it, right? I mean,
Okay. Councilmember Adams?
What is our current expiration time frame on a final plat? Is it 12 or 24 months?
Lyle, do you know that?
So I believe if a subdivision is not pursued, I'm just pulling it up, I believe we have a 12-month time period that something could be expired.
So we're beyond that.
From the date of the council's approval, and typically if we've seen progress, litigation, other items, or if there's engineered and red line drawings that are continuing to take place, that often continues. So I guess that would be an interpretation on whether or not that's expired or not, but I believe the ordinance is 12 months.
And when was this approved, the plat?
December of 2018? Or 17? 17.
So we're past the 12-month mark. Letter of the law.
No, the lawsuit tolls the approval process because the developer is not able to, it's not that the developers sat on their hands and hasn't developed it. The
It's been tied up in litigation.
has told their
Councilmember
time.
DeCare. Okay.
Frustrating
All right.
tonight.
Yeah.
Never seen
okay.
this side of you.
Any other questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion at this. We did the.
We did the motion.
We did a
Time
motion
for a vote.
already.
That's not part of our process. I'm sorry.
And Mayor, can I just add one thing? I apologize. I just want to make it clear that I think one of the findings of fact was that access should be granted to the Briggs through this. And I just want to, I'm not sure I covered that as clearly as I wanted to.
Okay. I heard that.
Okay.
I heard that. Okay, it's been moved, seconded. We've had comments.
I need
One
to share
more?
another comment. I mean,
One more comment.
What about Briggs' access to utilities? And there's a lot of things that really aren't on the table here. I think we're immaturely allowing this vacation to go through. And the courts haven't told us it has to go through. The reason why we're here is because the court said something's been done wrong. It's been booted back to us. There's no rush on this. Like, can't we say, okay, when these criteria are satisfied, then we will vacate it? And we get in quite a bit of a hurry up here, a lot. This is a pretty big deal. You don't think it's a big deal, so.
No, I think it's a big deal, Councilman
right.
Adams.
That's enough.
Well,
All
I'm
right.
deferring the mic.
No, I'm
All right.
talking, can
Hey.
I speak?
No. All right. Are you finished with your comments?
I just said I deferred.
Thank you. Councilmember DeCare?
To your point, you're right that there hasn't, in fact, you were 100% correct with your statement, there hasn't been any rush on this. This has been going on now for over 2.5 years. You guys, you personally saw this matter 2 years ago at a city council meeting.
I did everything I could then, too.
And?
Well, I'm sure you
No.
did, but I'm just saying, though, that I personally don't feel as though that there has been any rush on this matter at all. So, and I think that the timetable of all of our public involvement with this and our public meetings with this and everything else that's gone on before us, you know, proves that point and points to that, you know, this has been a very slow and methodical process, and, you know, I mean, we're revisiting things again after 2 years. So much to your point, you're absolutely correct that, this is, this has been a slow process. So.
Okay. Councilmember Barber.
For Nick and Shane, so why wasn't an ordinance created after the vacation was granted in May of 2017?
Okay, well, I think I do too, but if you remember at that time, the council moved to approve the vacation at the final plat step. So I think because it wasn't just like a single vacation ordinance agenda item, that I think the ordinance didn't get created for that reason, that it was done at final plat. So I think we would have argued, well, we did it because the motion was to vacate the road at final plat, but is that correct?
That's my understanding as well.
But, and the final plat was approved.
Correct.
So is it just an oversight?
That's exactly right. Yep. I think it was just an oversight.
And so the judge has recognized that oversight, and which is why we're here tonight.
Correct.
For this piece.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Any other comments? Great, let's vote.
Can I put a substitute motion on the table?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
I motion that we table this item until we see what's going to be done with our property.
Okay. Any second to that? Motion dies for lack of a second. We'll go back to the original motion, and we will vote, and it is Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right. All right. Now we are moving on to our work items. Historic Preservation Committee ordinance discussion.
At the retreat last month, we talked about the idea of starting a historic preservation committee. We put an ordinance together that's similar to other committees in our city. This committee would, one of the main purposes would be it's kind of a conduit for grants and other funding that might be used for a museum, but there'll be other preservation activities, historic preservation activities that could also benefit from this committee. So other cities have them, Bountiful, and this ordinance would establish that committee and put in a process for adding members to it and such. Again, we're in work session, so we're here to answer questions.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thoughts on this?
I think
Councilmember DeCare.
I think that creating a historic preservation committee ordinance is a good thing. I think it's a good thing for the city. I think we have Kaysville prides itself on our legacy of tradition and and preservation and preserving the city and preserving the city's roots. We have some historic buildings here, and I think forming a committee, kind of much like the Planning Commission or the Power Commission or something, having a board of a handful of people, would be a really, really good thing for Kaysville. I think it would help. It'd help give some insight. I think it would kind of put things in more of a public sphere where people could say, oh, Kaysville City's doing something to preserve its legacy and, to preserve, its history. So by establishing a body like that. So
Okay.
that's my take.
All right, thanks. Councilmember Garn and then Councilmember Page.
So there's no fiscal impact to just forming a volunteer committee, and we do have an interest, many people in Kaysville who are very interested in the heritage of Kaysville. So why would we be opposed? We're not tying this body, this council's hands in any way to either not participate financially in the future or to participate, or any future council. So to me, it seems pretty straightforward that we would want to do it and allow people to participate.
Right. Councilmember Page.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that the committee wants to get this is it really opens the door to allows them to get into the money, the grants and other things, but this is a requirement of it. And so I think that that's an important aspect of it. And so I think that it's just showing the city that as the city, we're willing to help the process move along to do the best we can. We want them to be successful in all that they do. So this is a great thing.
Councilmember DeCare.
One other quick thing too. So, I mean, how we decide to flesh this out is kind of, you know, there'll be more discussion on this, I'm sure. But I think the whole premise of moving it forward is a good idea. I also think having a city council representative as a liaison to this body, like we do with a lot of the other departments and a lot of other things across the city, is a good idea too. You know, to have somebody on the city council that can be there and actively participate and be actively involved in it and be able to report back to the city and, you know, with facts and finding facts and stuff. And, you know, I think, like I said, like, you know, like Councilman Garn said, I think that this is an outstanding idea, and I think it bodes well for our city to have something like this in place.
Okay. Any specific comments on the proposed ordinance that's in the packet? What it says is that there would be an advisory body that shall report to the City Council of Kaysville. The commission shall be composed of 7 members appointed by the mayor with the consent of the City Council. One of the members shall always be the mayor, who shall be an ex officio member. One of the members shall be a member of the City Council, and 5 members preference shall be made for professional members from the disciplines of history, archaeology, planning, urban planning, American studies, American civilization, cultural geography, cultural anthropology, and to those exceptionally interested in the history and heritage of Kaysville. At least 5 of the 7 members shall reside in Kaysville City. With the exception of the mayor and city council member on the commission, 2 or more members of the commission shall not serve on the same board, commission, or other leadership position within another organization while serving on the commission. Does that feel pretty good to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any comments on the proposed ordinance? Specifically, Councilmember Barber, did you have something?
I did. Section, is it 107? Where it talks about demolition notification. I can't tell what that red mark is telling us there. Is that adding something? It almost looks like an
just
equal
mean there's
sign.
maybe too many spaces, but I don't know. You're right.
I looked at it, wondered if it was demolition equals notification, which is a little questioning there.
Looks like a lot of space. I don't know.
Okay.
But truly, I think that section 107 about demolition and notification, if anything, could be even a little bit stronger, just about the public notifications that get sent out. And is there anywhere in there that says, you know, public comment should be, public hearing or public comment should be permitted before any demolition?
Well, if this is somebody's property, all right, and they decide that it's unstable.
Not city property.
This is not talking about city property. This is talking about, right? So I think what they're trying to achieve here is to have a photographic history of the building before they demolish it. Okay. I really don't think it's a good idea to open that up to public comment.
No.
Frankly.
Just for anything the city itself would be owning and getting rid of.
Right.
And I think we would do that if we were doing something on that was ours.
Yeah.
We could choose a process.
Okay. Okay.
So this document does not refer to any city-owned property off. Does it specifically state that in the document? Because to Michelle's point, I had the same concern. So the document needs to define what properties this committee has jurisdiction over.
It's just saying a historic site. I don't think that putting this document together gives this committee jurisdiction over any sites. I don't think they, I think we would, I think they could weigh, you know, if somebody wants to demolish their private property, I don't think we have a say in it anyway.
No, we don't.
But if it's a city site, I would think we would take the Historic Preservation Committee's thoughts on that very strongly. I still think we could choose to do whatever the city council wants to do, though.
Well, so it is mixed, city and private, then, to Michelle's point. It does seem like it's convoluted, and so to her point, I also have problems with 107. I think item C is way too strict of a deadline. Like, if let's refer to the old library. Let's say that, you know, I mean, that's definitely a historic building in town, taxpayer-owned. I don't like the fact that it's, okay, you get 1 week to take your photos, to take your measurements, to document the building, and on the 8th day, it's gone. So let's be very clear here what we're doing. I think that's a great point, Councilmember Barber. And then on the one hand, we're saying, no, it's not. On the other, it is. So what is it?
So
we should define it.
That's probably a good point, that should be clarified in here.
It's exactly the reason why an upcoming agenda item is back on the agenda again tonight. So let's be clear here.
Okay.
So if this involves public property, then I would definitely support Councilmember Barber's points, and I would still support my point that C, on top of her points in this section, needs to be loosened up.
Mayor? I think if we want to establish rules of how we demolish city property, the Historic Preservation Ordinance is not the place to do it. If we want to do that, there's probably other more appropriate places to do that. That's not what this does. So we can certainly do that in another place.
I think that, but some clarification is probably necessary.
Between public and
so let's work on that.
Public and private, or city-owned, sorry.
Yeah.
That's the only clarification.
Okay.
That would help.
Okay.
Can we also put consideration into item C? Why, regardless of, you know, whatever you're getting at, Mr. Manager, I understand that, but keep in mind we're the body. So I think the 1 week is too tight.
Yeah, we can change it to whatever you like. That's not a problem.
Do you have a suggestion on a time limit?
30 days.
30 days?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're going to tear something down, you're going to plan that out.
Okay.
You're easily going to be able to say, okay, we anticipate getting the demolition permit this time, so we're going to notify the committee at this time, 30 days before we even apply for our permit. That's easy. Give them 30 days, though.
Okay. So I'm assuming this is private property that this is referring to.
But we just said that it's convoluted and that it isn't just private property. Oh, okay, my apologies. I get that your comments towards Councilmember Barber, and I was siding with you on those. In the private property category, I side with you, I agree. Okay. But in the mixed category or public only, disagree.
Okay.
Got it.
And
so
I agree
they need more
that.
time, and there should be a public hearing to her point. I think that should be
Agreed.
written into this document.
Okay. And I think what our city manager is saying is, if we're going to demolish any city building, there will be a specific process for that.
Well,
that will
right,
come
and
before
keep
this
in mind
body.
with the last 2 years of talks about the library, you use the word demolish and historic society and committees, and you know you're gonna freak people out. So let's just open up this section a little bit better.
Okay. All right. I think that's good. All right. So do you have your direction on that?
Yeah.
All right.
Is it you think we can make those tweaks and put it on the action night agenda for next time?
Would somebody like to move it to action item with those changes?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we move Historic Preservation Committee ordinance discussion to an action item based on the conversation with or the suggestions of Councilmember Adams.
And Barber.
And Barber.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Garn. Councilmember DeCare.
Aye.
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 Okay. It is unanimous. All right. Next, we're going to go to Kaysville Fruit Heights Museum Committee collection request. So in your packet, I have been meeting with the Kaysville Fruit Heights Museum Committee, and they have done such a great job. They've gone through the old library, and they have actually cataloged all of the items that have been set aside through the years, and some of them are pictured in your packet there. And what the committee would like is they would like the city to donate these items to them, and so that, and they will take ownership of them and preserve them. And they hope to be able to display them at some point in a museum. So
It's a newly formed committee that.
yes, actually, the committee.
Current museum committee?
The Historic Preservation Committee is a function of the city, and we appoint and that. The Kaysville Fruit Heights Museum Committee, they are an organization in our community, but we don't appoint who sits on that. They are a 501c3. And they are a group of.
And that's who we're giving.
And that is who we would be giving these items to. And they would like to call it the Linda Ross Collection. Because Linda Ross was the one a former city recorder who collected these items over many, many years, and would like to name that after her.
Hey, with a name like Ross, I mean, who else do we know? Betsy?
So
very well intended.
Actually, Linda was here.
She was here.
Yeah, she was.
I just saw her.
She's gone, maybe.
We'll have this be a surprise to her. She doesn't know about this yet, so nobody tell her.
Mayor,
All right.
I have a question on that.
Councilmember Barber.
First, a comment that I've worked with this museum, Kaysville Fruit Heights Committee, quite a bit, and I am super impressed with them. They've really got their stuff together. Now they're literally getting their stuff together. They've done a really good job. So I have full confidence in them. My only question is, do we have some sort of tracking? Not that I see this happening, but if this awesome committee were to dissolve, what happens to this stuff? Not that I see that happening.
Right. So one of the members of their committee who they're working with actually works for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and helps them acquire items. And the process that we're going through right now is the process that she suggested that we go through. And if they were to at some point dissolve, I think that Kaysville City would probably have the ability to take the collection back. Is that correct, Nick?
We could write that into the contract for sure.
Okay. All right.
Like I said, I do not foresee that happening.
Yeah, but it's always good to plan for eventualities. Any concerns with doing this? Any? Councilmember Adams?
Nobody's raised any,
Okay.
right?
Nope, nobody has. And Councilmember Barber?
This is not a concern. I think we could all be so relieved to know they're somewhere, that they're being accounted for and taken care of, rather than a lot of these things we didn't even know, well, a lot of us didn't know existed. So
right.
I think if anything, it's a huge burden relieved from the city to know that they're going to be taking care of them.
Agreed that these items are going to be taken care of, and hopefully in some sort of rotation on display for all Kaysville residents.
Hopefully starts collecting more throughout the city.
That's
now that we
right.
know that we have a safe place for them to go, that they'll be taken care of. If anyone has items, come talk to us, please.
So would somebody feel comfortable making a motion to move this to an action agenda item?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay.
I would just add the condition that we talked about.
Yes, okay. Agreed.
As long as that's
yes.
in there.
It's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments?
Do we have stuff in the Zions Bank vault?
Yes.
Is that what some of this stuff is? That's other stuff.
That's different. That's a different collection. Yeah. And yes, we do. Those are items from the LeConte Stewart room, and we moved them out of the library so that they would be safe until we can do whatever needs to be done at the library or wherever the museum space is. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay. Amendment to the agreement for the annexation and development of land between Kaysville City and the Compass Holdings Development LLC and Capital Reef Management LLC. Lyle.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, you'll remember that recent months we've been working on a property east of Highway 89 in consideration of annexation of the property and the preliminary plat that's come before the City Council. As we've been reviewing that and working through the process on final plat and engineering and other details, a couple items have come to light that we felt would be appropriate to consider with an amendment to the annexation agreement. So foremost, what's kind of stirred is Weber Basin Water, who provides pretty much all the water to this area that we utilize on our city system, has met with us as staff. Been working on issues with Kaysville City, Layton City, Fruit Heights, and others on trying to get users to stop allowing secondary connections east of Highway 89. Currently within this agreement, we've required and asked that the development include, I won't pretend to get the number, but the majority of connections on a secondary system, which would have been likely provided through Mutton Hollow Improvement District. And then there would be some allocation for culinary connections to provide for irrigation. Also, as we've been reviewing the plat, some utility service providers, in particular our power department, based on their standards and requirements for where they require their conduit essentially at the same elevation as back at curb. When it was originally done through preliminary plat, it was approved with only sidewalk on one side of the public right-of-ways. A lot of the thinking there was there'd be less cutting and less additional fill in order to build the roads that wind up through the development. But because of the requirement for utility companies and where they're necessitating that they place their infrastructure, essentially that same amount of cut and fill that would be done with two sidewalk on each side is being required of the development. So we've gone back as we've looked at the secondary system and the request from Weber Basin and essentially the impact that we're having on the slopes anyway. We've asked that the developer consider adding sidewalk on both sides of the city streets instead of just on one side. So the crux of this amendment that's before you is eliminating the secondary water requirement. The developer has agreed that they would be willing to install sidewalk on both sides, though that's not a requirement of the preliminary plat. If in the agreement, they would do so. The way that it's framed before you this evening is done as amendment. If this is a direction the council feels is appropriate, we're working on, I guess, some of the semantics on some of the other words. We've got road access up to the water tank. We just wanted to be sure as staff that we had, whether they develop tomorrow or in 10 years, that be essentially a dirt road until they develop it, that's maintained and taken care of so that we can get up there to take care of the water tank in our systems. So that would be the remaining language that's in there. So that's being fine-tuned a little bit to make sure we get that right and everyone's comfortable with it. And we'd probably be back in the form of an addendum rather than just starting over in the agreement, should you choose to move this forward to an action item.
Okay. Questions, council?
I got one.
Okay, Councilmember Adams.
4.1.2.1, we're basically going to carry some of the costs of our own, of what we're owed. Why owner shall pay the city 1/3 of the total cost to buy out the power within 30 days. So I'm assuming Rocky Mountain Power's infrastructure of the city being billed, invoice for the buyout. The remaining 2/3 will be paid before final approval of the second phase. I don't know why we're shouldering costs there. And in the same point, down in 4.1.3.2, we're talking about shouldering some costs until the 60th lot is platted and recorded. So again, we're shouldering some costs down there. I'm not sure why. And then there's a payback. Yeah, that's down in the payback or payment schedule.
Where was your first concern at, Dave?
4.1.2.1. So we're just, it's built in here to where we're kind of shouldering some burdens as the city. I'm not really sure if that's our role.
Okay,
or
Nick?
if we need to.
If I could just speak briefly that those were provisions that were in the original annexation agreement that we've already agreed to.
That's right.
So if we could amend those if the developer wanted to agree to those amendments, but we've already agreed to those. Council's already approved those, that payment schedule.
Well, it's in our packet again, so.
Right, because we're amending certain provisions of it, but those aren't the amendments. So we could amend those, but we'd have to go back to the developer and negotiate those.
Okay, all right.
So on the same page, then it doesn't specifically, I'm going to assume here that in 4.1.3.1, owner shall be responsible for any costs also for the pump and pump house and piping. I would assume that includes engineering costs, right? Because we've spent about 110 grand. Well, on the pump alone, we had a change order of $67,000 last December that we got hit with. So do you feel comfortable, Mr. Mills, that that is included in any other associated improvements? Or do you think that we should put in there that also the engineering cost shall be reimbursed to the city?
If you just give me 1 second to review that.
I can speak to that. The developers have paid all of the engineering costs. I don't want to say all because I don't want to be misquoted. But they were paying them as we were spending the money. They were paying that money to us. But it's my recollection that the engineering costs would be borne by UDOT for the design of this tank, and therefore eventually neither the city nor the developer would be responsible for those costs. So the way the agreement is written is that the developer is responsible for all of the costs of the water tank that UDOT doesn't pay for, whether they're named specifically or not. So I think we tried to name a few, like the pumps and the pump house and the piping. And if UDOT doesn't pay for the engineering costs, they will be responsible for the engineering costs as well. But I
The
believe
developer?
Correct.
Yeah, I understand that verbiage. That anything above and beyond what UDOT may or may not reimburse us with, the developer has to shoulder. I'm just saying, do we specifically want to add engineering costs in there? Like I said, there's a almost $70,000 change order that the city just awarded last December.
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter if we add it in there or not. They have to pay for everything that UDOT doesn't pay for, whether it's named specifically or not. And then going back to Mr. Mills' point, we can't make arbitrary changes to this agreement because we've already agreed to it and it's already been signed and executed. So we can go back to them and ask them.
I understand there would be a process,
Yeah.
but it's on the table.
But I'm just saying it's absolutely not
discussed.
necessary. If this council wants us to do it,
You're
we will
telling
do it.
this body what's necessary and what's not?
I am. I'm telling you because you're asking me I'm telling you that it's not necessary to say that when we say in there that anything that UDOT doesn't pay for, they are responsible for. Whether that's if something even we haven't even thought of.
Well, it gets pretty descriptive. Pump house piping, and any other associated improvements. So you're saying anything means anything?
Yeah, I do.
Just want you to state it clearly. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions over on this side?
No.
Councilmember Barber? No?
I just had a comment. I think it's
Okay, I think we'll wait for a motion.
I'll move that we, I'll make a motion that we move the amendment to the agreement for the annexation and development of land between Kaysville City and Compass Holdings Development to a action item at our next available meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember DeCare, seconded by Councilmember Page. Comments? Councilmember Barber.
My comment was, I'm happy to see sidewalks on both sides. That'll be nice.
Agreed. All right. Okay, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right. Okay, review of Service Line Warranties of America Agreement. Okay, so I'll kick this off. I think we've spoken about this a couple of times in City Council, and then it rolled out, and we've heard a lot from our community. So the service line warranty is a program through National League of Cities that allowed, we put our indicia on it, and it is a company that is offering a warranty on water pipe and sewage pipe on the resident side of the line. Gives them the opportunity to basically have a specialized insurance on that. As we are trying to keep up the infrastructure on our side, we're trying to give residents the opportunity to have some backstop for the infrastructure on their side. Now, we have never done anything like this before, and one of the requirements was that we use the city's indicia. So but there was some confusion as the letters went out that it was a bill from the city, and so there was definitely some confusion, and we could have done a better job. Long story short. So the question I want to ask is, do we feel like this program is a good program? We signed up to do this for 3 years. We've done one. We've got one more letter coming out, just so you know. But we can withdraw from the program with 90 days notice, so we can just say, never mind, doesn't work for us. We could say, okay, yes, we want to go ahead and offer this, but let's try to do a better job of this. We communicated with Service Line Warranty, and they did say that instead of having the city's indicia on the envelope, we could say Kaysville City to Kaysville City residents on the envelope instead of using the city's indicia. And then inside the mailer, again, to Kaysville City residents, and they did want to have the city's indicia down at the bottom one time inside the letter. Was that your understanding when you read through that? Okay. So that's thing number one. We could do a better job at that. Another thing that we could do better is we could definitely put something on our website explaining it. We could put something in the newsletter explaining what's going on. Do some social media posts as well. These are all options on how we could do a better job at this. But I guess what I want to discuss is, does this council still feel that this is a valuable program? Do you still want to continue to offer this?
Mayor?
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead.
Just to clarify, we have a 3-year agreement with these folks, not a 1-year agreement. So
correct.
It's a 3-year, and then it's a year after that. Okay, I just wanted you to say you can't get out of it today for 2 more years.
No, but I believe with 90 days, we could.
I think after the 3 years, yes.
After the 3 years?
Correct.
Okay. I misunderstood. So sorry about that. Okay.
So we're locked into this for 2 more years?
Well, 3 more years. It just started last month.
Well, yeah, that's true.
All right.
You're welcome.
Nick?
The agreement was signed on July 19th of 2018. So even though they started it, it's 3 years from that date.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So 7 months in.
Why'd they wait a year to send a mailer out?
I believe we were working with the sewer district, weren't we?
I don't know why they waited.
Okay. It doesn't matter. All right. So so we've signed a contract for 3 years, but
Also a contract that clearly stated that they could use the logo, what the term was.
right.
I don't know what other things that the council or the residents are upset with, but they
Yes.
were pretty clear.
Right. Councilmember Garn.
So I think anytime you do this, I'm just thinking about anybody I talk to, maybe especially including my children. The first time you say something, it's like, what's that? Especially if it's complicated at all. Could you explain that a little more? Or they don't actually say it that nicely sometimes, but when I'm trying to give instructions, but I think it'd be a shame to give up now, because how many people know? I know my daughter had to replace her sewer line, which is one of the options here, and it was very expensive. And I don't know that people understand or are educated that, you know, the city's responsibility stops at the street, but the water main. I understand kind of the idea that is a government entity, Kaysville City, supporting one particular insurance company. But I just think over time, first of all, we're notifying our citizens of something. It's through the National League of Cities and Towns. There may be other insurance options out there. Maybe I had the advantage of being an insurance regulator and also just, but I think just common sense, if I got something like that and I actually read it, I would say, okay, I'm going to look at the rates and I'm going to compare that, and maybe I'll shop a little bit. Is there something else out there? But at least I'm informed. Okay, I know that, you know, in other words, if you read through it. So I think first mailing, there may be some, you know, some people who say, I don't like this, I don't understand this. But then if you give up at that point, then you give up before the communication process has had a chance to work. So I don't know that it's so much that a bad job was done in sending it out, as much as we just need to be a little more patient. So I would be for sticking with it.
Okay. Councilmember Barber?
I think it is a good program, like we said before. I think educating residents is really important, but we also think communication is important, and I felt like we received enough communication of people being confused that it warrants us trying to do better. So I'm glad they're willing to work with us. I think we need to be very careful about our usage of the city name and logo letterhead, because that does come with a very strong message that most people, when they receive it, myself included, it looks very similar to when I've received bills, to when I've received other notices. So lesson learned. I think if anything we've learned, our city's intellectual property like that should be very scrutinized anytime we use it, and especially anytime it's not us.
And we won't use it unless the council says it's okay.
Yeah.
As we did in this
Yeah.
instance.
And you did, to be fair. You definitely did. And we learned.
Yeah. Councilmember DeCare?
I think this lends to an issue that we've just had recently with the Power Commission. There was a flyer that was distributed and that really pointed toward Kaysville City endorsing a particular company, and that was certainly not the case. You know, things like that do happen. I mean, you know, they did that without our knowledge. They did that without our approval and sent it out to all 9,000 houses in Kaysville. And, you know, obviously it's been retracted and all that stuff now. But I can't see, though, where that confusion happens and those things happen. But to my fellow council members' point, I think that communication is key. I mean, communication is always key. And, you know, I agree. I don't want to give up on this. I do feel as though that it is a good program. But I do think that we can do a better job of broadcasting things and throwing things out there. So, especially in today's day and age. So, I may not
on social
see
media?
It. Right. I may not see it, but yeah, that's okay. So,
right.
But.
So this contract was
Councilmember
executed
Adams.
in 1 of 18?
No, July 19th, 2018.
Okay, so we're only 6 months into it then.
Yep.
So when it was presented to us on that date, July 19th, it was presented to us, and the comments that were made were that, you know, surrounding cities who participated in this, it was said that what they did and what would be a really wise thing for us to do, meaning Kaysville, is they really did scrutinize the letter that was sent out. So they made sure it did not look like the city was endorsing this program or encouraging or asking people. And then the sentence kind of ran on to another sentence from there. It says, so, and then the comment was made, so I think we have a lot of say in what that letter looks like. And we should be very careful if we do this program. So I think that's how they combated that. Speaking of how Orem and Clearfield. So under that context was, at least from, I can speak for myself, you know, and this concern was raised by James Hansen. So under that context, that's what satisfied my concern, and I didn't relay any more concern or questioning because I believed in what we had heard there satisfied it. And that's kind of why tonight I've been a little bit punctual about, hey, we need to make sure that we're very clear on things.
Can I get a point of clarification? What quote are you reading there? Whose voice is that in?
Mr. Shane Scott.
Okay, all right.
Word for word.
Okay, I didn't catch that. Okay. All right.
Sure. So that's where the confusion came in for me. I'm not using this as a scapegoat. I voted yes for it, and I mistakenly did. I didn't get the clarification. I thought, okay, it's going to look like we're not endorsing it. Well, to me, when a letter shows up in my home with this logo in the same corner, in the return address corner, and that logo on the letter, and the logo saying that it's from Kaysville City, or not the logo, but the letter saying it's from Kaysville City, I mean, I think this goes beyond doing a better job. I would like to ask, as difficult it may be, who reviewed the letter?
A couple of us did, but
So,
and I have the details of the changes we
and the
made to the
who?
letter right here.
Is couple denoting?
It doesn't
Did
really
you review
matter.
the letter?
I did.
And I did too.
So what specifically, Councilmember Adams, was that should have been removed
Come
from the
on,
letter?
you guys browbeat me all the time. Calm down here. Let's
I'm
take some
completely
accountability.
calm. I'm just asking you a clarifying question. What was specifically in the letter do you believe should have been removed from it?
The city logo.
Okay,
Shouldn't look
so
like
that
it's
was in
endorsed.
part of the agreement was that
Yep.
they used the logo.
Yep,
Every
but
city
then-
that's done this with them has used the logo as well of their city. And so if you choose not to do that, you could have done that at the agreement time, and I'm not sure if they would have continued to do the agreement. They probably would have, but.
Well, that's no harm to us. I mean, there's
But,
no
but once the
benefit.
agreement's signed that says that they can use the logo, and then they give us the letter to review, we can't say, don't use the logo, because they already have the legal right to do so.
But you stood at that mic seconds before the vote was taken and said that we will scrutinize the letter. We will ensure
we
that
did
it
that.
doesn't look like
We
that
did
it
that.
is endorsed
did.
by the city.
We did that.
We did.
And I have some details here if we really want to take the time to go through those, and I can tell you some of the things that we removed from the initial letter that we got from them, if you'd like me to do.
So does the logo and being signed by Kaysville City, does that not scream endorsement?
No, it doesn't. I think if you
Doesn't?
read the letter, no, I don't think it does. The very first thing they put in here in the third paragraph, they said, Kaysville City has partnered with Service Line Warranties of America. And we removed that part, and we said, do not use the word has partnered with. We said, Kaysville City is excited to make you aware of Service Line America is available to help eligible homeowners. So that's the kind of change that we made, asking them not to say that we endorse it. I think if a person reads the entire letter, they understand very clearly, there's very clear verbiage in here, that it says that they are an independent company, that this is not sponsored by Kaysville City. I don't know exactly the words they used. No public funds were used in the letter. So I think if someone reads every word, they even if they still have questions, they can call us. I don't think they have to totally agree that it's been that the city sponsored it.
All right.
So,
I'm going to
just last-
actually, I've got people lined up. So I'm going to go with Councilmember Garn, Councilmember Barber, then Councilmember Page.
Well, this is why I said it. It's not in fine print, but if you actually read the letter, it wasn't particularly long. You do pick up on that, and I think when we voted to approve this, and maybe not everyone voted for it, but it would have been a majority vote, I can't remember, but I think this is the same agreement that we have in our materials that were there before, and that's why it's so important, I think, as city council members, that we read every issue, you know, that we're aware of every issue, because it clearly states in the agreement that the city's logo, and now I've lost the spot where it is, but I don't necessarily need to read it. City hereby grants to company non-exclusive license to use the city's name and logo on letterhead, bills, and marketing materials to be sent to residential property owners from time to time. So I think at that time, and that's what the agreement allows the private group to do. So I don't think it's fair to say that that was a mistake. It was a deliberate decision by the council.
Okay. Councilmember Barber.
I'm just looking at the picture that I took. There was actually an insert that came with the letter that I feel like a lot of people must not have looked at. And it does have the Kaysville City logo, and it's a message from, it just says an important message from Kaysville City. talks about how this is an important plan, gives you an option, that it's an optional plan, independent company, and then has a number for more information to sign up, to sign out, or to opt out of future mailings. So that I thought was really well done, like this insert. And not a lot of people have talked about it, which probably means they got tossed.
It was raised too in the
All
forums.
right, you're interrupting.
So I thought like that was a really proper use of Kaysville's logo and the name of Kaysville City. Once again, I think you guys did what you committed to do on this opportunity. I just feel like we have learned, and I'm really glad you reached out to the company. It sounds like they're somewhat willing to be more accommodating in their future mailings. Is that right?
Yeah,
The email, did you get
to
that?
me, what they said was that it's important that they use the logo, and they explained why. So, and
Did
they
you
did
see
the attachment? And
yeah, the attachment did not use the logo.
Okay.
The city of Enid, I think it says Ena or whatever. Let's look at that again. And we can send that to the council members to look at as well.
And yeah, let's look at that and make sure, but at the end of the day, we have no legal ability to tell them not to do it. It's
right.
signed and sealed.
Okay, and then Councilmember Page.
No, I was just mentioning, I really think the city did a good job on this. I mean, I found when people called me and were confused about this, in fact, a lot of times they were just asking me, hey, is this a good deal or not? But if they were confused, I said, do me a favor, read it, then call me back. And everyone that did that, they said, yeah, okay. Yeah, the city's not endorsing it. I mean, I think that most people are probably like me. You just zip through it, you read it quick, and so I think there's a lot to do about nothing on this myself, but I think it's really important that we make sure. I mean, there's things that we can do to make sure that the people know and probably clarify it a little bit better.
Sure. Okay.
Well,
Councilmember Adams.
It's almost to this company's detriment to frame it that way. Unless their take rate has been successful thus far, I know that their anti-take rate is due to the fact of these issues. So if they put the opening paragraph and a sentence in there that says something to the nature of, hey, making you aware that we've consulted with Kaysville, we've allowed them to look at us, they feel comfortable with us, but we are in no way, shape, or form endorsed by Kaysville City. We are not Kaysville City. This is not coming from, because this has been to their detriment. It's harmed them. It would be to their benefit to perhaps clarify that a little quicker in a full page letter. Because you're right, nobody wants to read that full page. And it looks, no offense to the company, it looks like junk mail. You know, the envelope is, a tenth of a penny cost envelope. It just looks like junk mail, production mail. So it would probably be to behoove them to do something. Last question. So, Mayor, how did we get involved with this company?
So,
who's the point of contact? Who put down the story?
Name was Dennis Lyon, and I met him in D.C. At the National League of Cities conference that I went to, and last March, I heard about this program, a prescription drug deal that they also are offering residents, which I didn't think was a good idea, but a little bit too avant-garde for us. So anyway, I listened to this guy, also talked to Clearfield Mayor, and they did it. Talked to, and then Shane talked to staff from Clearfield and Orem to see how was it worth it, etc. And I'm not sure if the other communities took 50 cents on every subscription, but
neither one of them did.
Yeah, we decided we don't want any money from this. But it is to our benefit for our residents to have this, because water is a finite resource, right? And if you have a break and there's a bunch of water gushing, we're losing water, right? So it is a benefit to us. So
the water would be turned off. It's a little emotional, but that's perhaps not the best rationale for something of this nature. But
I think it's
It doesn't mean the
can be
water just gets
catastrophic
turned off.
for, it can
by
be a
doing it.
catastrophic incident for families who aren't expecting it. So
Financially, yes.
yeah, and so that's why I had the guy come and present to us, and it was definitely not my decision. I didn't vote on it, council did, but I felt like it was the right decision, that you guys made the right decision.
There's some merit to it, no doubt.
Yeah.
Probably
So-
learned a lot here.
Yeah, so, anyway, we can do a better job, and that's for sure. All right? Okay, now we're going to call to the public. Do we have anybody signed up for call to the public? All right. Okay, council member reports. How about community development?
Yeah. Well, just to let you know, we're right in the middle of, the legislature. This year, I think, it's been building up for several years. I think it's going to hit us this year. In fact, I know it's going to. I think we're going to see a lot of land use changes. And boy, what a wonderful thing that the city's going through their strategic planning right now and everything else. Because we have some tough decisions coming up. And, I guess we wait to see what happens with the legislature. Some of the issues that they're facing right now with not only affordable housing, but some of the mandates that's going to go forward. It's going to affect a lot of cities. And everyone that I've talked to that's in those positions said it will pass. And they have great support. And so, but it will have an impact on every city in Utah. So I guess what I'm saying is these are interesting times, and we're going to have a lot of work for us coming up.
All right, thank you. Power.
Just to speak to one thing with
Sure,
Commissioner Hill, Councilmember Page. I was at Local Officials Day. Actually, there was a handful of us that were at Local Officials Day. And that was one of the driving factors out of the legislative review from the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I mean, we sat in on that hour-long conversation. Actually, Shane Scott and I sat next to one another. You guys were in there too. And they really, it's coming soon to a city near you, and we're going to have to be the ones that are going to have to deal with the fallout from it, So, like you said, there's going to be some exceptionally tough decisions and choices that are going to have to be made across our city. So, back to power. We had our Power Commission meeting on Tuesday evening. Introduced the new members of the board. Gave an update on the AMI metering project. That's going exceptionally well. Gary Hatch was here representing the power company, and he gave a full rundown of what was going on in that. It's online if you get the chance. You want to watch it tonight when you get home. It's riveting. So, but yeah, it's good meeting. I feel really, really impressed with our new members. They were very engaged, had a lot of insightful questions, we had a really, really, really great dialogue for an hour in that meeting. It was very productive, so it was good to see.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councilmember Barber, can you do Parks and Rec, and also can you give an update on fiber?
Parks and Rec is going well. Rec season coming, and we're planning for our events this year. We just had a 4th of July meeting, so it's here already. Fiber is moving along. We have an information session Monday night, this coming Monday night at 7 o'clock. We have a presentation, question and answer period, and then an information breakout sessions. So we've worked really hard. We've prepared a lot of information, and we hope people will come, bring their questions, and come to learn and to give their feedback. So.
Great.
One last thing.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to keep hijacking. So, but to talk about fiber, so the newsletter that we probably all received dropped a couple of days ago, and as a direct result of that, my phone and my inbox has been inundated with a lot of folks against, a lot of folks for, some really angry citizens. There's a lot of misconception in that. I have taken the time to respond to all of them personally, pointed them in the direction of the city website, provided them with information, told them about the meeting that we're having on Monday. Told them I'd be more than willing to meet with them and sit down with them and discuss things with them. So, but it's been about a 50-50 split out of about 3 dozen people that I've talked to over the past 2 days with this. So, and it's funny too, they're either adamantly against it or adamantly all for it. There's absolutely no indifference at all. It's not like, you can bring it if you want to.
Well, they wouldn't
people are
contact
either-
you.
Well, no, that's exactly right.
Right.
But there's a lot of, I'm either.
Strong feeling.
Yeah, right, or, so, anyway.
Very good.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Public Works.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, nothing specific new to report, but just in general, it's going to be construction season pretty soon, as I mentioned before, but it's a wonderful position to be in, to finally be able to make some improvements, particularly with the roadways, safe routes to school, curb and gutter sidewalk, improving some of our roads that some people may have think resembled a Moab Jeep trail or something in certain places in the city. So it's good that we're able to move forward with a lot of those projects, but that also, when you've got construction going on at full speed around the city, creates some inconveniences. So I just urge the public to be patient and know that it's going to be worth it once we get improvements there.
For my part, I'll just say we had our city council retreat, very productive, got a lot hashed through. I think that we've got a lot going on this year, a lot of really important things. Our strategic plan, comprehensive plan, we are we will be remodeling this building, probably starting in June, and we're looking at this fiber project. So lots of things going on, and just want to give appreciation to all of our staff who've been doing so much to keep all the balls in the air as they do all the time. But thank them for that. City manager report.
I have a quick question.
Quick question, yes.
Yeah, since this has been a pretty casual council member report, and there's been a lot of people off topic of their assignment, I do have a question regarding an agenda item that went by tonight. It's real quick. It's the Historic Preservation Committee.
Sure.
In the executive summary, there's a sentence in here that says that this committee would work hand in hand with the museum committee on finding and grant requests discussed last meeting during the closed session. So when was that?
That didn't take place. That was just a mistake on my part.
Okay.
So you typed these up?
I did that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Good catch. Sorry about that.
just kind of odd that that would go out there and
Sorry.
advertising what
Crazy, I made a
closed meetings are
mistake,
about.
but it happens a lot. You'd be surprised.
All right. City manager report.
I don't have anything tonight, Mayor.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good job, sir.